Hello again. In the last chapter, we wrote our own code to do some benchmarking. This code was quite simple. We recorded the start and stop times and measured the difference between them. And I did say that this wasn't a robust way to do benchmarking, but that in many circumstances, it is a good first approach because it's quick and simple to implement. You'll also remember that as part of the process, we also put in place a warm-up period before we started measuring. This was our attempt to try to overcome the issue that the Java virtual machine will natively compile methods that are regularly called, and this can of course interfere with the measurement of performance in a benchmarking environment. So now I'd like us to move on to looking at how we can measure in a more robust way. And to do this, we'll be using another tool called the Java Micro Benchmark Harness, or JMH. JMH is another part of the OpenJDK. The idea of JMH is that it will set up for us an environment to run our code and measure its performance in a much more powerful way. JMH takes care of the warm-up period for us, and it also analyzes the code that we are testing to try and analyze its performance in a more production-like environment. The other thing that JMH does is it will run our code potentially thousands of times to produce a summary of the output for us that will again be a bit more robust of a picture as to how it's performing. So we don't have to keep rerunning our code lots of times and averaging the results. JMH will do all of that for us. So what we're going to do in this chapter is see how to use JMH to analyze the performance of our two competing prime number checker methods. We'll be able to look at the results JMH gives us and think about what this means. Now I will say that JMH is quite a big project, and this is just going to be a bit of an introduction to using JMH, although I will point you at the end of this chapter into where you can find out more information about some of the other things it can do. So the first thing we'll want to do is to get JMH installed onto our computer, and the way to do that is using Maven, and the instructions we need are actually on this front page here for the JMH project, and we just need to copy the Maven instruction. I'm just going to do that now, and then let's open up a terminal window. And I've navigated to the location of my workspace because I want to generate a project within the workspace that we're then going to be able to open in our IDE. So to do that, we'll just paste in what we copied and press enter. And that's going to take a little bit of time. And so I'm going to pause the camera while this runs and press resume when it's finished. And that has now finished, and that wasn't too bad. That took about 9 seconds, and that will have created for us a new project in a folder called test. Now I think we should rename this folder to something a bit more meaningful, so let's do that next. And I think actually I'll do that using Windows Explorer. Let's rename the test folder, and I'm going to call this JMH benchmarking. And then we can open that project in Eclipse. And we'll click on finish, but this is quite important, is that JMH benchmarking needs to run with compliance version of 8. So I would click no here. We don't want to change the compliance version to 9 or above. Just choose no there. And then if we open up the project, we'll find there's a Maven pom.xml file. The next step is to run that to get all the dependencies. So we'll just do run as Maven Build. The goals are Eclipse. I should have said perhaps Eclipse : Eclipse there, and click on run, and then that's going to take a little while. Actually, I've done this before on this machine, so it's quite quick. It might take a bit longer on your machine to download the dependencies, but when that's done, we should be able to refresh the project. And all of the problems have gone away. That looks like it's going to compile okay. So that means we are ready to start.